So what I want to talk about today is the fallacy that I see repeated over and over on all these big channels and also in the news media and by these generals and all these other people. The problem is, in these people's minds, nuclear weapons operate in a tactical vacuum. Now, that sounds kind of strange, so I'll explain what I mean. They look at nuclear weapons as being the ultimate. Once you use one of those, everything else, nothing matters. It doesn't matter what you use with them. And the problem is, if you look at the Russian and Chinese military, the way they utilize nuclear weapons, whether they're tactical or strategic, they do not operate in a vacuum. They operate as a combined arms attack. Several of the statements I've seen on these large channels show they don't understand nuclear weapons. They don't know what nuclear weapons do, and they're just blowing the BS. So, first of all, they talk about the leadership, whether it's Biden in Congress or Putin going into underground bunkers and being all safe. Now, both sides have penetrator weapons. They may not be able to actually reach the bunker, but they would send waves through the ground like an earthquake and blow the inside of those bunkers out. Now, let's say theoretically the U.S. could not penetrate the bunker Putin has because it's under 1,000 feet of rock. Well, all you would have to do is say, hey, take the outer jacket off of uranium and put cobalt on it. Now, what would that do? What that would do is make a cobalt-cased nuclear weapon. And the problem with cobalt-cased nuclear weapons is they leave a persistent radioactive fallout. So instead of the normal fallout that decays by the rule of 7, you have cobalt radiation. So the radioactive isotopes of cobalt, it would be between 25 and 50 years before you could reoccupy the area. So if you think about it, if you got a bunker and you don't want nobody coming out of that bunker, you can starve them. So it would be an actual war of attrition. And what would happen is you'd use a cobalt-cased nuclear weapon, detonate it on that facility, and what it would do is throw radioactive cobalt all over the area. So the rad levels would be too high for years for them to come out of the bunker. So it becomes an issue of food, sustenance, and fuel versus the radioisotopes. So without decontamination assistance from outside the bunker, guess what would happen? Then we look at tactical nuclear weapons and strategic nuclear weapons. They're never used alone. So if you're going to use nuclear weapons, there's an extremely high probability to use chemical and bio with it. So with chemical, you have two types. You got persistent and non-persistent. Persistent agents last for up to 2 weeks, maybe longer. Non-persistent, it can be a matter of hours or days, and then you can move through the area because the threat dissipates. So for instance, if we look at the intersection of I-40-995 at Benson, North Carolina, if you used a nuclear weapon to destroy that in Highway 301, you cut traffic on the East Coast and from coast to coast off. Now, what you would do to make sure they couldn't repair that is not only would you do a ground burst and have a lot of fallout, but you would use persistent chemical agents. And that way, people could not move in to decontaminate the area. Now, what I want to talk about is filters, gas masks, and all these filtration systems people are selling you. What you need to know is there are biological and chemical agents that all militaries have that can go through those filters. And the only way you can operate in areas contaminated with those items is to use supplied air, such as an SCBA. Now, what they don't tell you is chemical weapons are very heavy for the area that they contaminate. So it would take plane loads of chemical weapons to coat an area. So if you're not in a target area or a major city, the chance of you getting a chemical attack is very low. That's why filtration would work for fallout, because you would not be likely to receive a chemical or bioagent that would go through filtration. So fuel air explosives are also available. They can be dropped from a Tu-95. Everybody keeps telling me they can only be dropped from a transport aircraft. But the B-52 and the Tu-95 can carry a 30,000 pound bomb, because in the 50s they used to carry 20 megaton nuclear weapons, which have a weight around 30,000 pounds. So that means they could also be configured to carry fuel air explosive. Now, one other thing to think about is the fact that there are weapons more powerful from nuclear weapons. The weapons that are more powerful than nuclear weapons use a nuclear weapon as a power source to generate plasma to power them. And that's all I'll say about them. So please share your thoughts. We'll see you on the next video.